What strange thing is your neighbor doing? My neighbor next door is kind of like Boomhauer at 70. He's been losing it for about a year now. He's outside painting his house with interior paint and putting chicken wire over the siding. We stay out of it unless his wife wants us to call an ambulance again. They're both sweet, but I can't understand a word he says. This past 2 months, he took his wife's car, raced it and tore it up, hit a mailbox in her new truck, replacing her car he destroyed, and broken her wrist and dropped dead in the grocery store, but CPR worked and he's okay now. My neighbor lost her mind when she went out of town and came back to find we'd mulched our entire backyard to pay us back for beating her to the punch. She was so mad she started roping off her fence line. We didn't mulch near her fence line. We ignored her for about 2 months while she continued to escalate the situation, putting tubs over my mom's plants, digging up shrubs and flowers that she deemed too close to the fence and more. It finally peaked in June of last year when my mom put flags in the ground for summer and she called the police on us. I spent my birthday explaining what she had done and that she kept getting worse over time. Policemen went to her house, was in there for a very long time, and finally left with her chasing him outside screaming some nonsense. Now, we just sit and say nothing to her. She tried to start shit again, but it didn't get very far. When I was a kid, we had these neighbors who just assumed the mantle of my parents' best friends. One day we got home to find their kids in our pool. So my dad asked how they got into our yard. Turns out the neighbors had gotten tired of waiting for my parents to get home and visiting like usual people. So they decided to just take down a piece of the wall between our properties and put a small gate there instead. Across the street woman literally went fully insane because someone, either the city or gardeners, cut a few branches off her tree. She made signs, threw red paint on the tree to symbolize blood, threw caution tape all over it. Now has built a huge cage around the tree. It was just a few branches and the tree was never hurt. This has been going on for over 6 months. She just lost her mind completely. I've got a new neighbor that sets up a LED-lit karaoke machine to sing sermons on randomly. He'll go for several hours when he's fired up. Just him on the steps outside his apartment with his karaoke machine singing gospel-style sermons about the Lord punishing sinners and saving the righteous. Then he goes back to smoking pot and drinking on the porch with the guys down the street. I can't decide if he's more or less annoying than the guy always trying to block street parking like he owns it. My office faces my neighbor's backyard. At the very edge of the backyard, they have a separate, unattached garage. Maybe, I'd 25 plus times a day. This guy walks from his house to his garage and then right back to the house. If I go outside to throw out the trash, he's out there. If I wake up at 7 a.m. on a Sunday and let my dog out to pee, he's out there. If it's 2 a.m. and I'm randomly staying up late, I'll peek out my office window and sure enough, he's out there. My Ring camera catches him on the motion sensor constantly. Hot, cold, rain, snow. Same shit. The thing that's strange is that he's never really doing anything in particular, just walking to and from the garage. For some reason, it just gives me the creeps. Next door, a contractor tore down the old house and is building a custom one that dwarfs ours. What else is new, right? Outside is mostly done, just the inside is being finished. They dug the foundation too deep and hit the water table. So now a sump pump runs 24/7, pumping the water out into the street as the basement windows aren't yet installed. When the owners eventually move in, that pump will forever need to keep going or their basement will flood. Last month there was a power outage due to a storm. Next day a bunch of guys were over there, taking care of the water, bailing it out of the half-finished basement. The house is probably worth a cool $3 million or so. Imagine buying a house for $3 million and if the sump breaks or there is an outage, boom, flooded house. I pointed this out to the Polish dude laying bricks and he laughed and laughed. He obviously knew this well before too. Our neighbor looks in our mailbox every day when she checks her mail. Our mailboxes sit side by side. It's very quick, almost like it's a tick. I have no idea what she's doing. I normally have already got our mail out. We just moved into this neighborhood about 3 months ago and have never met her. She wears a uniform that looks like a police officer. We were told she works at the local jail. It's very strange. And I believe it's illegal. Luckily I have no strange neighbors these days. I hope. When I was in my early 20s I lived in a very little town in Wisconsin out on the outer edge closer to the country. From where I lived you could only see one house down the highway and a gas station just a little further up from that house. One evening while we're on our deck watching the sunset, I noticed it smelled like someone was cooking some not so savory meat. The smell bothered me and I watched the neighbor from up the road burn his barrel/pile for hours and hours until the flames went down enough for the fire to smolder out on its own. I woke up the next morning to head to Illinois and the only way out of town town was to pass by burned barrel neighbor's house. On my way out I saw that the burned barrel neighbor's house had been sectioned off with yellow police ticker tape, was surrounded with small town cops, local bigger city cops, state police, CSI vans, and a coroner's vehicle. Turns out the creep, who had a live-in fiancé, took a young gal from Madison who had placed a sex work ad on Craigslist back to his home with him and claims to have found her dead beside him after waking up. So, what had happened was, he chopped her up and was burning her body for hours into the night. The smell of the unsavory meat I thought he was cooking all night was her body burning. The other night around 3 a.m. my new neighbor pulled up to their house when me and my friend were smoking a cig in our driveway. Note: no one has lived at this house for months, and I haven't heard of a new neighbor or met anyone yet. Being 3 a.m., I initially unkindly / loudly shout, "Hey man, do you live here now? What's your name?" I do this 2 to 3 more times over the next minute or so. He starts rummaging around the property with a flashlight. So I start shouting, "What are you doing?" Since I'm assuming now this is either a random squatter or someone there to steal something since A, no one lives there yet, B, he's not responding to me and my friend, and C, it's 3 a.m. He finally walks over and doesn't say anything. As we ask him the same question of "What are you doing here?" he starts walking up on us, so I tell him to stop and that I'm calling the police because IDK who he is. He says fine, call 911. So I did. Police come, and turns out he's the new owner and was just coming by at 3 a.m. to check the place out. Very weird scenario that could have been completely avoided if he literally just said he was the new owner, or said his name, or really just said any reason for being there. He was a boomer. Go figure. I don't know if this is something my neighbor actively does, but I did witness a weird behavior once and it's lived rent-free in my head ever since. I stepped out of my house and was looking at my plants, enjoying the sun for a minute on the walk to my car, when I noticed the across the street neighbor walk to a tree in the middle of his yard, reach into a hollow, and pull out a toothbrush, which he proceeded to brush his teeth with while watering his lawn. I drove away, and so I didn't see if he returned the toothbrush to the tree hollow or not, and I have not since seen him repeat the behavior. But man, I can't stop thinking about it. The lady across the street from me is the only one of my neighbors that I haven't met. Every afternoon, she vacuums her driveway. She pays for a gardener, but I always see her out there spraying weed killer on the yard or raking the gravel. She has one car, with a driveway and a garage that she can park it in. She puts up traffic cones and no parking signs along the street, even though street parking for up to 36 hours is legal in my city. And in the 3 years that I've lived in this house, I have never seen anyone obstruct her driveway with or without the cones and signs. Oh man, my neighbor is why I understand now why people agree to HOAs. We don't have one, but he's that neighbor. We live in a quiet middle-class neighborhood in an up-and-coming area on the west side of Houston. Median home value is around $400–600K. This guy, however, has the brainworms bad. 1. He collects old VW Beetles. He uses his front yard to store them. There are 6 or 7. He moves them around so they are never in the same spot. 2. He has shipping containers in his driveway. 3. Either he got complaints or he wanted to hide them, so he put up a 10-sheet metal fence to hide them, and the rest of the side of his house. 4. He planted bamboo all over his front and side yards to try to hide his house? Great idea in theory, it's of course ugly, but it's sparse so it just looks wittier. 5. He's a hardcore Trumper and he has had between 5 to 9 political signs in his yard. Full-time. For the last 7 years. He rotates them out depending on the elections going on or when they wear out. 6. He recently hung up a tire on the corner, from a tree, that he spray-painted red. It can't be a swing because it's like 8 feet off the ground. Can't figure that one out. 7. His front door is always open. You can see piles of boxes in there. 8. He always walks around outside with cut-off jeans and no shirt. He's got the crazy eyes, is bald, and a big beard, as you can imagine. I'll take a pic tomorrow if people think I'm bullshitting. The guy is an absolute menace. My neighbors have a 30-year-old, nonverbal son who gets very intrigued about what's happening on our side of the fence. Sometimes when I'm in the garage, I don't hear him come out of the house. I'll shut the door, turn around, and be face to face with a 6 feet 3 inches man who's just glaring at me on the other side of the fence. It makes his day any time he can successfully sneak up on me and scare me. He also doesn't do it every day. He's somehow very good at knowing when my guard is down. It's not my favorite game in the world. My neighbor across the street has a large lot. Maybe 4 acres, surrounded by privacy fence. They have been slowly filling up the land with what appears to be brand new sheds. Like the kind of sheds you buy from a dealer on the side of the highway with metal roofs and metal siding usually. All different kinds. All one story as far as I can tell. I really don't think they are putting anything in the sheds. Also, the entrance to this lot is double gated, sorta like the kind of thing you put in place to make sure nothing runs out when you have the gate open or no one sees in when you have the gate open. I also never see anybody actually there. I just see more and more peaks of the roofs of these sheds over the top of the fence appearing. My curiosity is killing me. I want to look over the fence so bad, but it would require a ladder and I'm afraid they have cameras.